So let's play it like we have been with questions as we go through. We'll try and move through this in about an hour. I think that's probably about how long it will take. But there might be questions that end up taking us on to sidetrack things. And to me, those are important because that's where your minds are at, and that's where the learning takes place, both for me as well as for you. And if you have a question, there's a pretty good bet at least one or two others have a very similar question. And so asking the question is a service to others. So please do ask your question. Just try and be succinct and short so that it's easy to keep the question in line with what we're doing and then move on from there if that would work for people. So here's kind of the overview of what we're going to look at. Opening the gate or penetrating the veil, the grand key of silence. Ra talks about three mental disciplines that align with balancing the chakras. So we'll look at what those are. The veil, actually, where it exists, it's actually between the conscious and unconscious minds, which is important. The heart is actually a grand key. So silence of the mind brings access to the guidance in the heart. We're going to talk about the veil, and faith and the veil. What is faith and how that works and what's significant about that with regards to penetrating the veil. What kind of guidance comes and what to expect or look for, what to listen for. And then there's a kind of a correlation between graduation and the fourth density and the requirements for that with also regards to the chakras and the raising of the Kundalini energies and things like that. So it kind of puts a balancing in that. And then we'll move on in the last 3-4 slides. We'll look at what this lateral or alternate timeline and the quarantine of the earth is and how that impacts us with regards to the veil. So that would be the kind of overall summary. Now, if we go back here, if you look at the bottom, this is both from the Law of One and from a being or entity named Quo, who is a sixth density social memory complex in the Confederation, part of the team that Ra is a part of, that is kind of the overseers, or here's a movie term, guardians of this part of our galaxy. These are truly the divine beings that often have appeared in legend and myth as angels, even gods in ancient times, like Ra did in Egypt. Not that they appeared wanting to be called gods, but as time has gone on, they've become attributed to that. So that's kind of, yes.
Larry has a question.
Go ahead, Larry.
Oh, great. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, hello, everybody. Scott, I've been so looking forward to this presentation. It's like front row seats, at the movie theater. Couldn't wait. Quick question, Scott. The veils between the conscious, unconscious mind. I know this may seem elementary, very basic, but conscious, unconscious mind. Is that the same? Is unconscious the same as subconscious mind, or are we talking two different minds?
Yeah, they are often used interchangeably in modern psychology, even. So just it's a terminology preference that really has no distinction in meaning, at least from my point of view in this. The unconscious mind is the subconscious, or a part of the mind that we don't have direct access to. That runs a lot of the mechanics of the body, like the heart rate, your temperature, things like that, your pain thresholds, all those kind of things are automated. But it also runs a lot of the other intuitive aspects that we often let our conscious mind talk us into or out of. So it's that part of our mental construct, mind, body, spirit construct, that we're not consciously able to access or aware of directly. It's more of a subtle, indirect connection. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so let's see what we're doing. So we'll start with the Law of One, the quotes with the with Ra in it have the numbers of the session and the question. 5-2 is the session, second question. And so this sequence, and again, just to help you understand, I highlight the yellow and underline it because those are points that I think we need to take notice of and just make sure we understand. That will go often into the summary at the end. Excuse me. So Ra says, we begin with the mental learning teaching necessary to contact, full contact with intelligent infinity. Intelligent infinity is Ra's term for the infinite mind, the divine intelligence that is the creator, being the one creator of which all are a part of. And from Rupert Spera's point of view, it'd be the dreamer, in which we are entities in the dream of the dreamer, the one intelligent infinity. Okay, so interesting that those correlate with a lot of these ancient descriptions of what deity is. In the Kabbalah, they say that the highest point of the Kabbalah is the seraph, where you connect with an entity that is described as infinite, formless, and light or aware. So formless, infinite awareness, which is another way of saying intelligent infinity, isn't it? So all through the writings of the great Indian teachers, there's also a great deal of information about what is the nature of the divine mind, and it is pretty much boils down to that. So when Ra says that, that's what he's meaning, intelligent infinity. So we're penetrating the veil to connect with the divine aspect of eternity. He goes on, the prerequisite of mental work is the ability to retain silence of self at a steady state when required by self. In other words, when you choose or when you try, when you practice it. The mind must be opened like a door. What a key and beautiful phrase. So implied in that, the opening of the door is the key is silence. The key opens the door, doesn't it? The metaphor of a door that is locked, you need a key to open it. What's the key to open the mind, the conscious mind, into the subconscious chamber? The key is silence. So in that one sentence or paragraph, there's deep, rich, powerful instructions. Silence is the key. The mind must be opened like a door. Without that key, the mind stays primarily shut. Most people live their lives with their conscious mind shut. Eckhart Tolle would say that they live in unconsciousness. He talks about that truly conscious are those that are enlightened enough to realize that they are infinite awareness, and to come to connect with that aspect of yourself. That's when the mind, or the door of the mind, is open. So the key is silence. So we'll revisit this key a couple of times, especially when we go into Quo's stuff. So the first of the three disciplines, and there's three of them, is to know yourself. And so he goes on. To begin to master the concept of mental discipline, it's necessary to examine the self. Know the self. What is it that knows that I am aware? The polarity of your dimension must be internalized. So you need to understand what it is that you are. Where you find patience, and this is where he starts giving analogies of what the polarity is. So where you find patience within your mind, you must consciously find the corresponding impatience, and vice versa. Each thought a being has in its turn an antithesis. So you're looking for the balance. The disciplines of the mind involved, first of all, identify both those things of which you approve and those things of which you disapprove within yourself. So there's the first tip, to know yourself. What are the attributes that I have that I like or approve? And what are the attributes that I dislike or disapprove? I understand that I'm patient. Let me explore when and how impatience manifests in me. and vice versa, rather than just saying, I like these, I hate those, I want to ignore the things I don't like. Whoops, sorry. I clicked on it. So within yourself, you're going to look at this. This is what it means to know yourself. First of all, identify both the things of which you approve and those things of which you disapprove in yourself. And then balancing each and every positive and negative charge with its equal. So that's what he's saying. Identify those things you like, then identify their antithesis. What's the opposite to that? Identify those things you dislike, and what's the opposite to those? The mind contains all things. Therefore, you must discover this completeness within yourself. Knowing yourself is understanding that completeness. And so there's a meditative process that would take some time and go through. When we went through the very first presentation we did, which was about clearing negative karma, part of what that presentation was about was a kind of a proposed process for doing this exact thing that Ra's talking about here. The second step, accept yourself. So he says the second mental discipline is acceptance of the completeness within your consciousness. So once you've examined both the things you like and dislike and their opposites, you need to accept those. So there's another level, isn't there? Not only do you recognize them, but I learn to accept the completeness within my own consciousness. It is not for a being of polarity, which we are, because this is a world that requires us to choose polarity, service to others, service to self, right? It is not for a being of polarity in the physical consciousness to pick and choose among attributes, thus building the role that causes blockages and confusions within the already distorted mind complex. So choosing attributes, saying, I like this, I don't like this, I'll ignore this, I will shun this, I'll try and suppress this aspect of my personality because I choose to dislike it. That's what builds blockages. He's saying that. It's how these blockages to your energy centers occur. Each acceptance smooths part of the many distortions that the faculty you call judgment engenders. So just the fact that we don't accept both the positive and negative causes us to judge ourselves and create blockages. That's what the second step is trying to instruct us to resolve that. All right, which is interesting because a lot of modern interpretation in theologies talk quite harshly about judging ourselves for doing things that we don't like, maybe lying or deceiving someone a little bit, or being a little bit angry, or being a little bit something else that we dislike. And we make judgments on ourselves with this. Raz says in doing that, we create blockages. And so the object is to get to a point of acceptance. Again, that first presentation about clearing the karma, that was about that. You first review where your blockages are and learn to review them in a way that you can embrace and accept what happened, what that taught you, etc. Third step, see self and others. So the third discipline of the mind is a repetition of the first, but with the gaze outward towards the fellow entities that it meets, in other words, other people. In each entity, there exists completeness, just like it does in you, right? So see self and others is another way of saying this. Thus, the ability to understand each balance is necessary. We must look to balance it in ourselves and then look into others in the same way. When you view patience in another person, you're responsible for mirroring in your mental understanding impatience, patience in patience. When you view impatience, it's necessary for you to, for your mental configuration of understanding to be impatient patience. Okay, and he's giving that same analogy. We use this as a simple example. Most configurations of mind have many facets. And understanding of each self polarities, or what you would call other self polarities, can and must be understood as subtle work. So you know yourself, accept yourself, see others in the same, through the same lens of qualities and less desirable qualities, things you like and dislike, and their polar opposites. to embrace them and their completeness as well. And then he says this, the next step is the acceptance of the other self polarities, which is rid of the second step. So basically you do these same 2 steps on yourself first and then on other people. That's the 3 disciplines that help to clear out the chatter that blocks the conscious from the subconscious mind and creates a thickening of the veil. Any quick questions just about that?
Yes, Lou?
Yes, thanks, God and Lee. How does the silence connect to the 3 mental disciplines? What I mean is, what does it mean with is silence? I don't understand that clearly.
Yeah, it's a good
Is it
question.
letting go? Letting go is this, or taking an approach according to the moment, or leaving the circumstance for another time, or I don't get that.
It's a good question, Lou. My understanding is that a lot of the blockages create a lot of anxiety and chatter. A lot of it puts you out of the now and dwelling on the past with emotions that go along with that are usually negative, or dwelling on the future with hope for things that aren't realized yet, rather than centering yourself in the now. The silence puts you in the power moment of the now. And so the silence occurs as you are able to rid yourself of these boulders or baggages, of these blockages, because they're a big part of what takes you out of the now. Concerns of things you've done in the past, fears or anticipations of things that might happen in the future, rather than being fully present now. So the short answer is that's how it links to this.
But that's how it links. But in what is the meaning of silence? How would I define this silence?
We will get a little more into that, but essentially it is shutting down the mental chatter in the mind, the dialogue in your head, so that you can listen to the deeper impressions of the heart. That's basically it. And they talk about learning the meditative process of quieting the mind, of learning to notice when the mind is quietened, and learning how to acquire the discipline of being able to draw upon that. So it's a process that takes time, because we live in a very noisy world with lots of distractions, and our mind is constantly going. Both Rupert and Eckhart talk about the addiction to thinking. Your mind is constantly blabbering on in the back of your head. It doesn't need to be that way. In fact, that's actually an unnatural state. A natural state is the peaceful knowing of I am, the observer. And so one of the keys to the silence is learn to observe your thoughts. Notice who's aware or what's aware of your thinking and feeling. And then as you go to the answer that question, am I aware? What is it that is aware? And you'll find the answer is emptiness. And that's kind of part of the step at length. Okay, so there's a whole lot more to come on silence. So let's just tease that a little bit. Is there any other follow-up questions, Lou, or is that okay?
No, that's okay. I got it. Thanks.
Okay, great. We're good, Lee?
Ray?
Okay.
About the silence, as we were talking about the mind silence, as our all these 5 senses are related to outside, whenever we see something, our brain start thinking and all that. I was thinking, I was contemplating that, is this the reason, one of the reason the people used to go out from the home or from the world, so that they are going to away from all the outside world? Because once we will hear something, we will see something, definitely we will get the images in our mind, and accordingly we will start contemplating from one thought to another thought and jumping like that.
Yeah, I think the quick answer is that we are all seeking happiness and peace, and we often get the thought or the idea that that must exist outside of us. We must go and acquire it out there. The truth is that it exists only in one place, and that's in our silent center, in our connection with the divine, is where that happiness and peace dwells. And that's the whole process of the both Hindu and Buddhist and practices, essentially in meditation, is seeking to acquire that which we've always had. That's always there. Instead of going out looking for it and trying to acquire fame, wealth, stuff, relationships, whatever it is you think you lack, you come to center in the knowing of yourself. And in that knowing, you'll realize, I already have that. I already have what I want. I have that peace and that contentment. And both Rupert and Eckhart have great information and books written on that discovery and the process of that discovery. But they're not the only ones. They're just the most recently modern and well-known writers and teachers on those things. Other questions?
Thank you.
No, that was all.
Okay, so the shadow work, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Larry just put his hand up.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lee, Scott. And hey, those questions just asked about silence, I think are totally relevant and really interesting. And Scott, I've got a question to take off from Lou and Ray's questions, comments about silence. Is there a possibility that in having to embrace emptiness, we fear that we don't exist? And could the brain chatter be a way of trying to prove to us we actually exist, but it's counterproductive to experience in the oneness of silence that we are? Is there a connection?
The fear that you don't exist in the silence comes from the ego, because what happens when you connect with your true essence is the ego no longer matters. The ego is a false construct that the mind creates to control and manipulate it and keep you distracted, essentially, from who you really are. It's part of one of the obstacles we need to overcome. So yes, there is a fear of that. It's a genuine fear. It's the fear the ego has. The truth is that the ego cannot provide you with what you really want. It can only provide you with distractions and excuses and all sorts of other distortions. It's only in your true essence of who you are. And that's what Ra's talking about here. That's what the shadow work is learning how to get out of the ego mind, the constructed entity that we think is our ego, our self, our separate self, and learn to connect with who we really are and what we really are, part of a reflection or a fractal of the divine oneness that is all of us and all eternity. It is the creator. I think I answered your question, but ask it again if I didn't, Larry.
You answered it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ray, do you have a new question, or is your hand just gone back up?
No, it's a new question.
Go ahead.
So, Scott, isn't it, as we are coming up to the bottom line again, who we are? Now, I'm not talking about the ego and thoughts. I'm talking about who we are. At the bottom, we are the void, the
Yes.
voidness, right?
We are that which is aware. And when you ask yourself, Rupert does this quite well. He'll have people ask him, and he'll say, "Are you aware right now?" And everybody takes a second and then says, "Yes, I am." And you can do it yourself right now. Are you aware? Well, yes, you are. Where did you go in your mind to answer that question? You went to a place that was empty, because there's no thing to attach your mind to. It's completely the divine connection. You can go to, what is it that is aware? am I aware? Yes. What is it that's aware? It isn't a thing. It is infinite, formless light or awareness or consciousness. That is who you are. That is also the description of the divine creator.
So that's my point. And at times not struggle, but we are in deep voidness because continuously we are practicing and we connect to that voidness. So then when we come out of that with awareness, but deep inside it is the voidness, which
Yes.
remains as we more and more practice, it remains there. And you have that like a anchor with that feeling of being void.
It's yes, although void is not a good example or expression of what it is, because it's not completely emptiness. It's just formless. It's not a thing, but it resonates with an underlying peacefulness first. And then as you deepen into that, it has an underlying immense love and a great sense of valued fulfillment. But usually we notice first it's not a thing. So that's where the word void comes from. It's a poor word, but it's probably the best approximation we can get.
Uh-huh. And why we always say light in the void?
Light, yeah, light is equal or equated often in these ancient words with consciousness, awareness, enlightenment, light.
Right.
They're used in a synonymous. Again, words are designed in our languages to talk about things. We're using them to talk about something that's not a thing or nothing. It's not a thing.
Yes.
That's why when you say what is it that is aware, you cannot define a thing. You can talk about the qualities of it. Feels infinite,
Yeah.
feels formless, it feels aware,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
There you go. That's as best as we can get with the words that are designed to talk about things. Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense now. Thank you. That's all for now.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. So going back onto silence, and this is from Quo. So again, Quo is one they channeled after they finished channeling Ra. They're actually channeling Quo sometimes when they were also channeling Ra, and Ra actually acknowledged Quo in one of the sessions as a brother entity, if you like, to term it that way. So silence is the key. Who am I? So these are. But Quo's wording is a little bit easier to read than the Ra materials. It's just his way of expressing himself. Seems to be a little more fluid. So let's read through this and then see what questions come out of that. One of the advantages, therefore, this is Quo speaking. One of the advantages, therefore, of meditation that is silent is that when the inner silence is entered, the door betwixt the conscious and unconscious levels of mind opens. So there he is hinting at the veil is between the conscious and unconscious mind. Silence is the key to that door. He's saying the same thing Ra said several years before. For some, very slowly. So this is how they open. This is very important because we often feel like we're not doing it right if we're not getting this dramatic thing, but he talks about that. For some people, it's very slowly. For others, with a great bang. Whoops, do it again. With a great bang. For most, at a steady but relatively slow pace, interrupted occasionally by real leaps towards forward in awareness. So there is a key and beautiful sentence or paragraph that describes the process of awakening and enlightenment. The inner silence works as opening a door. For some people, it happens very slowly. Others, it can happen with a great, fantastic event, but that's actually quite rare. For most, it's relatively slow-paced evolution, occasionally interrupted by some great leaps forward in awareness. This is the general pattern for people who have become conscious of their spiritual identity and now wish to accelerate the pace of spiritual evolution by making more efficient and thoughtful use of the resources available. And part of that resources available are those 3 disciplines we just talked about that Ra gave in the last slide. He goes on, language has to be made up of words because it's finite. It has to be made up of units of thought that are smaller than a concept. This in itself is very troubling to those in the metaphysical system of illusions. That means them. That means those on the other side of the veil. That's his way of saying those on the other side of the veil. Those in the metaphysical system of illusions that are attempting to speak with you, because the common communication used in the metaphysical universe is concept sharing or telepathy. And this instrument, as this instrument will call it, so this instrument is referring to whoever they're channeling through right there. Communication by concept is a direct envisioning of a whole system of thought that is in a certain pattern and that can be offered as a whole. So that's what you get. Not so much a orator's dialogue of blah, 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 although that can happen. But usually it's communicated as a concept in a whole system and in a one unit kind of thing. And that requires shutting up the monkey in your head, quietening the mind to enable you to notice and receive that clearly. He goes on, to unravel the concept and exhaust its possibilities can be a lengthy process. The translation into words being awkward and elephantine compared to the cleanliness and lucidity of concept communication. This is but one kind of vibration. So there's some keys into what kind of ways you will get guidance through the veil. That's the way that they communicate there, and that's how they communicate to us. Our biggest problem is we're too damn noisy in our heads to hear it most often. So that's why this key of silence is so powerful. He goes on, if with patience you attend to the present moment, so there's the key to be here now, the power of the now. With patience, attend to the present moment and desire as purely as possible to know the love of the one creator, that which is yours to do and that which is yours to be shall rhythmically come to you and express to you. In other words, what he's saying is if you have that, you're patient, attend in the moment, you will get the guidance of that which is yours to do, and that which you want to do or need to do will be open to you and expressed to you. When you feel resistance, stop, wait, be aware, be here now. There is something that you need to know. Make space for that knowledge. So there's another great key. We will feel resistance often because the monkey in your head will try and talk you out of it. Notice when that happens and thank the ego monkey for sharing and go back into being attentive to the present moment, stillness in the moment. Say, who's observing my thinking? What knows that I'm thinking that? What's aware? And that'll go back to the back door of your brain where the quiet room is, right? And then dwell in that, wait, be aware, and then you'll get to know what's being offered to you. Go into the silent and ask. Then be prepared to wait for that moment when the heart knows and there is no more doubt. So there it is. Very powerful. The heart will know, not the head. And it comes from going back in the silence and asking, and then being open, dwelling, holding the silence in peace and just allowing it to come. Be in the present moment. Very powerful keys right here. This is how you open the veil. It is a seemingly simple question to ask, who am I? And yet it is endlessly subtle. For to know the self is to know not simply things about the self, but to know that which holds all of those parts of the self together. He's saying and reiterating the first step in the discipline that Ra gave in the last slide. Eventually, the question of who am I leads into the spacious and integrated sense of being. So that deep sense of dwelling and being in that quiet space comes by constantly revisiting that question and being present in the fully present in the moment, as Eckhart and both Rupert and Eckhart say. Sense of being that reflects one of the names of the Creator chosen in of those of the Old Testament times to describe their deity. I am that I am. Iha eta iha is how they say it in Hebrew. I am that I am. As you dig with a trowel of who am I and the weeder of what am I doing here, you are preparing the ground and planting the seeds that blossom into the gift that you came to share, the essence of self that blossoms into the commitment and loving compassion of those dwelling within the illusion, but knowing that they are not trapped in the illusion. So there you go. That's Guo saying exactly what we were talking about in your questions. Your questions preempted this point. Hopefully you see that connection. Any questions on this slide?
Nope, all good.
Okay, great. So here's what Ra says about balancing the chakras. So we're going to go through each one kind of quickly. The 7 chakras. He's going to talk about what are the common blockages that we experience as humans at each chakra. So this is a good starting point where you can say, do I have that? Do I experience that? To kind of get an idea of maybe where your energy is being restricted. One of the greatest analogies I saw was in a little Japanese cartoon called The Last Airbender, where a monk was teaching Aang how to unblock his chakras and raise his kundalini so he could go into the avatar state. If you've seen the cartoon, it's actually very, very deep and well done. But one of the ones is he takes him to a place where there's like 7 little ponds that are going down a terrace. So there's a top one, and then it kind of trickles into a little stream that goes to the next one, and so on. And up at the top ones, or any of them, there was a little moss and weeds and that. It clogged over where it trickles in. So it was just dripping slightly into the next pond. And he talked about how you need to clear that out to allow the energy to flow from the higher pond down to the lower pond. Well, that's exactly what happens here. The energy clearly flows up from the earth into us. That is the direction of flow of the energy primarily. And so that is where the insights come. So we must clear out the chakras in that order so that each pond feeds the next one. Don says, how does an individual go about balancing himself? What are the first steps? So there you go. Ra says the steps are only one, and that is an understanding of the energy centers which make up the mind-body complex. In other words, know yourself, but now from the energy point of view. This understanding may be briefly summarized as follows. The first balancing is that of Malkuth. Malkuth is the Hebrew word for earth, and that actually is the word they give this red or bottom chakra. Okay, so the first balancing is that of the red chakra, vibratory energy complex. Oh, there he says they're called the red ray complex. And understanding and acceptance of this energy is fundamental. So understand what that energy is. It's the driving energy, it's the sexual energy, the creative energy, it's the safety energy. It's the energy that comes up whenever you feel threatened and you go into fight or flight. It's our very much animalistic survival energy, okay? And so we're all very much aware of that when we're put into one of those conditions. So understanding and accepting that. It's a good energy, but it's often used to harm out of just ignorance many times, sometimes intentionally. The next energy complex, which may be blocked, is the emotional or personal complex, also known as the orange race complex. So it's right below the navel where the womb is. It's again the what he calls emotional personal complex, known as the orange ray complex. This blockage will often demonstrate itself as personal eccentricities or distortions with regard to self-conscious understanding or acceptance of self. And so there's some keys that you can ask. Am I an eccentric person? We all know eccentric people. Some of them are endeared and lovingly eccentric, but others are uncomfortably eccentric. And so again, that's a judgment, isn't it? But you can ask, what are the eccentricities I have? What are the beliefs? What are the patterns I go through? What are my routines? What is it that makes me or might make me come across that way? How does it reflect self-consciousness or self-confidence? Understanding acceptance of self. So there's the first two energy centers. Questions about those two?
No,
No?
all
Okay.
good.
So yellow and green. So we'll keep going through. Again, 1512 is the right session. The third blockage resembles most closely that which you've called ego. So that's yellow ray. It is the yellow ray or solar plexus center. Blockage in this center will often manifest as distortions towards power, manipulation, and other social behaviors concerning those close and those associated with the mind-body-spirit complex. So how you are socially with other people, how you are when you're in power or when people are in power over you, how you work with that, right? Those kind of issues or questions come up. If there's significant blockages there, people can get very distorted here. A lot of politicians have a very clear blockage in this area, and they crave this, right? Not all, but many of them do. It seems to be people who gravitate towards positions of power. Not all, but many. It's because they're blocked at yellow ray, and they have a very strong distortion for that. Those with blockages in these first three energy centers, so the bottom three, or next slide, will have continuing difficulties in an inability to further their seeking of the law of one. Again, the law of one is not a concept in the book. The law of one is the principle of unity in eternity, in creation, is the reality of the creation, is what they mean by that. So if you're blocked down here, it'll be very hard for you to kind of understand that and to further elucidate it. The center of the heart, or green ray, is the center from which third density beings may springboard, shall we say, towards infinite intelligence, towards the divine mind. The heart is the key center in this sense. To open the gateway, to open or penetrate the veil, it's the heart that's the matter, that's the center of it. Blockages in this area may manifest in difficulty in expressing what you may call universal love or compassion. So that's interesting. You might know people who seem compassionless, especially with regards to maybe animals, etc. You see that sometimes. That's a manifestation of a blockage to some degree in the heart center. So here's yellow and green. Green being the key. The threshold is when you break through and open up the green. That is a key one. And in fact, we'll find later on, that is what signifies your level of ability to be graduated into fourth density or 5D, is raising your Kundalini to open the heart chakra. That's the stepping threshold. Questions about this one?
Nope.
Okay. So then it goes to the higher ones, blue, indigo, and violet. So the blue ray center of energy streaming is the center which, for the first time, is outgoing as well as inpouring. So he's saying this one, not in these ones, the energy pours into you. It pours into you and flows up. Here, you express energy out and give it out to others, often through teaching, through speaking, through singing. You manifest through the voice, don't you? You express through the voice. So the throat chakra is what he's meaning by that when he says, for the first time, is outgoing as well as inpouring. Those blocked in this area may have difficulty in grasping spirit-mind complexes of its own entity, in other words, knowing themselves, accepting themselves, and further difficulty in expressing such understanding of self. Entities blocked in this area may have difficulty in accepting communication from others, other mind-body-spirit complexes. So they might be always the doubter, always the one, well, I don't know if I believe that. Oh, they're saying they're channeling thinking. I think they're just playing a game. And there's nothing wrong with being skeptical, but if they have a blockage there, they'll find it very difficult for them to even give space to consider some things like that, because it's out of their paradigm or comfort zone of belief system. Oftentimes, the blockages show up in that way. The next center is the pineal or indigo ray center, so the third eye. Those blocked in this center may experience a lessening of the influx of intelligent energy due to manifestations which appear as unworthiness. So the sensing of unworthiness, oh, I'm not able to have communication with beings from beyond. I have to ask somebody else. I have to go to my priest. Like a lot of religions were built around this sense of making their followers feel that they can't receive it. You have to come to the priest or the bishop or the whoever, the prophet, and they will tell you what God wants you to know, which was never the true concept. So manifestations that appear as unworthiness are a blockage in the third eye. As you can see, this is but one of many distortions due to the several points of energy influx into the mind-body-spirit complex. The indigo ray balancing is quite central to the type of work which revolves about the spirit complex. So this is the key about spiritual connection, is what he's trying to say there, which has the influx then into the transformation and transmutation of third density to fourth density. So that's one of the keys from the heart, green, to the indigo, third eye, is that connection. That's one of the keys to opening the spiritual gifts and enabling you to transmute energy into fourth density ascension. It being the energy center receiving the least distorted outpouring of love light from intelligent infinity. So it's most direct, clean inpouring, and having also the potential for the key to the gateway to intelligent infinity. So a lot about the indigo ray is a very important chakra point, but it keys off the heart. The heart must be opened to open that point. So the key to opening the heart is quieting the mind. The mind is behind the third eye, so we must quiet out all the noise in the back of the stage so that we can allow the actors to play out on the front of the stage undisrupted by the static, is maybe an analogy that helps. The remaining center, which would be the crown chakra center, influx is simply the total expression of the entity's vibratory complex, mind, body, and spirit. It is, as we say, balanced or imbalanced, has no meaning at this energy level, for it gives and takes its own balance. It's whatever the distortions may be, it cannot be manipulated, and as can the others, and therefore has no particular importance in viewing the balance of the entity. So to balance the entity, balanced entity is these six. You balance these six, and then it's reflected in there. In another place, he says that the crown chakra center is kind of like the thermostat. It measures the whole energy balance system. So they don't have to look at each energy center, and this is going into true diagnosis. They can look at your crown chakra and see how balanced you are as a complete being. It's kind of what's been implied here, and it's reiterated in other ones. So there's the balancing of the seven energy centers, what they mean by that. The raising of the Kundalini. That's part of the process of knowing self. Know your energy centers and know how they work. They work from the ground up primarily. Our job in our discipline in doing the shadow work, etc., is to clear out any blockages. And this doesn't just happen once. You'll find that as you do it, you'll come around and around and around, and you'll get more and more granular in your iterations. It'll get easier the more you do it. The most difficult time is usually the second time you do it. But it's a process of continually scraping the barnacles off your boat. Questions about that?
No, all good.
Okay, good. So, Quo on the heart chakra and opening the gateway. So he says this, we are those of Quo, it is quite so that the complete opening of the chakra body, so that full power is moving through the lower chakras and into the heart chakra, is essential for this work. So he's now saying exactly what we've just gone through in detail that Ra said. Ra was giving you kind of ideas of how to do it and what to look for. He's saying it's very important. There would not be any movement through the gateway to intelligent infinity in the absence of this completely open heart chakra. You're not going to get very far spiritually if you're not able to access your heart chakra. Thus, it is that we recommend a careful and thorough clearing of each and every issue of the day that may dog at your heels and pull you away from a completely opened heart. And one of the exercises that Ra even recommends is at the end of each day, review your day and process things that maybe didn't go as well, and so that they don't fester into wounds. You can clear them regularly. Okay. The gateway to intelligent infinity is at the very top of those chakras. So the gateway is at the crown chakra, involving the indigo and violet ray chakras, the third eye and the crown, springing from the heart, from the open heart. So again, the key is the heart. The seeker may open the gateway to intelligent infinity by moving into the violet ray, the crown chakra, through the indigo ray, the third eye, when the desire and will focusing in firm intention and asking that work may be done in consciousness. That's his way of saying going through the process, like Ra's saying, clearing each one, finding the blockages, analyzing, knowing the self, accepting the balancing the positive and the negative aspects of self, harmonizing, accepting both sides of you. If you are a patient person, it's because you have no impatience, and vice versa. If you are an impatient person, it is because you've also known patience and you see the difference, accept both aspects of you, come to balance them. Yeah. And so he's saying the same thing there in his way of work. Keys here is the heart is absolutely essential, and it shows up all the time. So the more and more that you can find yourself centering your attention and your attunement into guidance from the heart, the more you'll find that the veil becomes thinner for you. Any questions here as we move on?
Yes, we've got a question from Ray. Go ahead, Ray.
Although it looks like more and more practice is required, but however, there are many things which are mixing together. As we have set our intention every day, I think we all are setting our intentions again and again, surrendering, opening the heart chakra. Why it is taking so long? Is it because of the barriers and the blockage? One thing. And how much it is automatic? Are we on the automatic pilot mode just by setting deep intention and focus? And then things are happening and you are observing? You can see that because if we speak something wrong or impatient or any incident any day, there's one self of within ourselves which is observing, yes, something is going wrong or things, but the other side is saying, okay, this is clearing. So how far we are on automatic? So that's, I don't know, my question. Again, as I said, I'm mixing few things. To what extent we are automatic pilot mode? Things are happening for us because we set up our intentions ages ago and we are repeating, we are reaffirming every day.
I think that the gist of the question can be answered by asking, if you're in automatic mode, are you fully present in the now? Or are you in anticipation of getting somewhere? or in regret of something, or in contemplation of something that was done in a previous moment. Most times, automatic pilot means you're not focused in the now, you're not attending to the now. So what I would say quickly is, if you notice yourself in automatic mode, make yourself present, bring your mind present into what am I doing now? Be in that moment. It's not something to pass through so you can get to somewhere else. If you're waiting in traffic, instead of thinking I'm waiting in traffic because I want to get home and do this and this and this, be fully present in that moment and fill that moment with awareness that you are awareness, and just pull yourself into that moment. And that's when you'll start to quieten the mind and get a sense in your heart for the being that you are, instead of being preoccupied by getting it done, the automatic getting it done. Not saying that that's wrong, because it serves us to a point. But when you notice you're doing it, you're spending your day primarily just automated, you're not in the moment. And so once you notice that you're doing that, there's the key to go, I want to be present in this moment. Doesn't mean I need to stop what I'm doing, other than don't do it mindlessly, do it intentionally. Be mindful, be aware of being aware in that moment. And that will help. It doesn't take a lot of discipline and practice to be present in your heart. It just takes getting out of your way. It's not about doing something different. It's about stopping doing so much that's distracting you. Our world is one of complete distraction. This illusion has become complex and full of distractions. Your phones, your TV, your computers, all the technologies, all of it is just an ongoing piling on distraction. Don't allow them to capture the moment and take you away from being present in the moment. The gift of now is the present. That's why it's called a present. Be in that now. And so anytime you notice that, that would be the key. Come back into the present. And you'll find that you'll center in your heart when you do that. That could be the discipline. You don't have to go off and do something else. Keep doing what you're doing, but in that doing it, be present. Does that help?
Yes, right. Thank you.
Right, that's all.
Okay, great. So now Quo's going to go into what faith is, because faith is a thing that has a lot of baggage around it, because it's affiliated or associated so much with things around theologies and different religious disciplines and religiosity kind of concepts that have actually corrupted it and made it something that's intangible or unusable. So Quo is going to kind of tease that out a little bit here. So let's just go through this and see if we can get an understanding of what is faith, and how does that relate to the veil. He says, in each of you, lying in potential within you, each of you has lying in potential within you, or should we say within your consciousness, all of the guidance and information that you need. The challenge, of course, is how to gain access to that guidance. That's what we've been asking for. However framed in conceptual structure, that guidance is a denizen of the sleep of the deep mind and roots of consciousness. So he's again saying it's in the unconscious. He again says it right here. And the door from the deep unconscious self to the conscious self must needs be opened or set ajar in some way in order for guidance to move into the conscious realm and become available in order that you may have access to it. So it's there now. You're not aware of it because the door is not ajar enough. How to open the door is what he's saying here. So let's see what he goes on to say. It is well to remember that guidance is definitely and always there. So there's one axiom you can hold to. It's not that they're not offering you guidance. It's that you're not opening and receiving it. It's offered. The promise is made. It's offered. even when you are at the most seemingly far reach from it, even when you feel most blind, deaf, and dumb, the guidance is there. The guidance is waiting for your awareness. So it's there. So there's something to have faith or confidence in. It is a matter of unblocking the channels of communication rather than searching for something that may or may not be there. So it's there. You've just got to tune your radio to the right station. We say this because in order to access guidance, it is extremely helpful to be practicing a life in faith. And what he's meaning there is faith that the guidance is offered. You've just got to tune into it. It's there for you to hear if you tune into it. We do not wish to imply certain structures to a life in faith, but rather wish to look at this quality of love that is faith. So there's a beautiful insight. Love is an aspect or quality of divine love in you. It's a quality that arises in you. Faith is a paradox, for one cannot gain faith. One simply must leap into behaving as if one had faith in order to begin a life in faith. You have to make the jump, right? You can't gain faith. You just need to leap into behaving as if one had faith in order to begin a life of faith. Thusly, the first act of faith is the leap into nothingness. We talked about that in Larry's question about the ego feeling like it will disappear. That's a leap of faith. Faith, after all, would not be faith if there were a way to rationalize it or prove that it existed by any reasonable inquiry. This makes faith a real challenge, for if you have not faith, then how do you achieve it? So some great insights into what is going on, what is really faith. That leap looks very foolish and feels very dangerous. And yet we say to you that if you can hold the essence of faith, and here's the key, the essence of faith is, which is that all is well and that all will be well. If you can hold that as your background premise, that the divine is orchestrating all things for my good, that whatever's going on, however it seems to be not helpful, is for your good. All is well and all will be well. If you hold that, that is the bedrock background premise that enables you to have the confidence to take the leap of faith, to step into the darkness. That's a key attitude there. If you can hold to this attitude, that faith will grow. And if you do that, then faith will grow and flourish and blossom in amazing ways. And if you become overwhelmed with a lack of faith, you have but to start over to take that leap again. And the journey exhilarates once more. There is never a failure that faith will not be recovered from. So that's hopeful right there. Just because you failed once doesn't mean you can't continue on to build it. There is never a desert that is too wide for faith to cross. And faith then, when you wish to seek guidance, you may approach this search in various ways. Thusly, in order to prepare the ground for connecting with guidance, it is very skillful idea to place the self in the act of meditation. This is the tremendous commitment, and it is a life changer. Any entity who has meditated for any length of time is aware that even a little of this silence of mind is a powerful exhilarant for the process of spiritual transformation. So I'm not sure you can see those words down there, but that's what it says. A little of this silence of mind is a powerful exhilarant for the process of spiritual transformation. They're having faith that meditating and learning to literally quieten your mind and center yourself in your heart gives you a sense that you'll start to really sense that underlying belief or axiomatic truth. All is well and all will be well. There you can build from there. So faith is a part of penetrating the veil. It's taking that leap into the darkness, that which seems risky or even foolish at times. And faith is never able to be explained away rationally or logically. Hence the need to quieten the chatter in your mind. Your mind will talk you out of it, is another way of saying that. Questions about that?
Yes, Lou.
Yes, thanks, Lee. Scott, so in simple words, that could be like faith will be like saying everything is in divine creation.
Yes.
Is accepting that not necessarily a momentarily result of whatever situation that I may not agree with. It just means that we need to accept it. So we accepted it because sooner or later things will work out in the way that is best for us.
There is a divine plan, and you helped orchestrate a key part of that plan between lives before you were reincarnated into this existence. You had a great deal of input into it, specifically because of the time period we live in right before the ascension. Only, or very much, those that are interested in spiritual things were at a point where they were ready to graduate or were wanderers that were helping others graduate. You had a great deal of input into your life plan. Trust in that. That's faith. Yeah. Having trust that that is orchestrated for purposeful growth and benefit, that it will turn out okay. It will turn out for the best. All is well. All will be well. Any other questions?
Yes. Jackie, did you still have a question?
Yes, thanks. It's just the last sentence which was off screen, but it was lovely. Could you just repeat from even a little of the silent mind from there?
Yeah, even a little of this silence of mind is a powerful exhilarant of the process of spiritual transformation.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. And
I'll
Catherine.
make these slides available through Lee. You guys can download them after we've done this. I'll make them available. So, yeah, go ahead, Lee. What was the other question?
Catherine?
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Scott. Most deep and revealing discussion. Getting back to the faith issue, could it be expressed as you know that you know?
Yeah, I think actually he says something a little bit like that in this next part. But yes, it's the natural knowing. It's the heart knowing rather than the mind knowing. Yeah. Should we go on? Leo, are there other questions?
Judy, did you have a question? I can't see a hand, but I see your microphone.
Well, yes, I have. I mean, I love the whole thing, Scott, because I've experienced all that in a slightly different way, but it's been my experience, all that you've been talking tonight. I just wonder if Ra mentions or Quo mentioned the importance of the tongue in this.
Of the tongue or tone?
Tongue, Tongue. The tongue projects from the heart and it goes up to the pineal gland.
Yes, I'm familiar with what you're
Yes,
saying. I'm just trying to think. I haven't read all of Quo's things, so I can't really speak whether they speak for it. But I don't think the Law of One mentions the tongue from that point of view.
Can I just explain what happens if people
ahead.
use the tongue? If you put your tongue up where your hard palate meets your soft palate and just stimulate it just there, up there, that actually activates and stimulates your pineal gland. So there's a direct connection between the heart and the pineal gland, which helps the whole thing. And the interesting thing is that the tongue has something to do with the throat chakra, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting because
Mm.
the tongue is quite long, goes down
Mm.
your throat, basically down to where your heart is. So it's the connecting organ. Yeah,
Yes, it is.
yeah,
It is,
yeah,
absolutely. And very important and very useful and
yeah.
helpful.
It's a channel for that. So that's very good information. One of the things that is beautiful to do with that is if you place your tongue near and hum so that your tongue vibrates, it's another way of stimulating that area. But all of these are technique practices that can help. And those that went through Judy's meditation have learned some of that from there, I think. So thanks, Judy. Appreciate that. Let's go a bit more into faith. I'm a little bit worried about time because we're already at an hour. And if you guys will bear with me, I think we've got about another 20 minutes. But we can stop if we want to break it into two. We'll continue on unless you guys indicate to Lee that it might be better to go with part 2 next time. Because I don't want to stop answering the questions. The questions to me are just as important as the material we're covering. So I'll let you decide that, Lee, as you go. Let me know, because I had my timer on and we've already been an hour. So just mindful of that. So let me know what you think, and I'll just keep going until you do.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I say keep going.
Okay. So we are those of Quo. Faith is that which is a product of the use of the will to choose to know that all is well. What a great statement. The will is your intention or your will, right? Your choice. And the choice is to know that all is well. So there you go. There's a definition of faith. It is not faith in anything. It is not tangible. It is not measurable or quantifiable in any way. Yet all entities know what faith is because when they see it, they are drawn to it, transfixed by it, and blessed by the light that is expressed from faithful eyes, faithful voices, faithful hands. What a beautiful statement. The spiritual principle involved is very close to the beginning of creation, for the principle involved is a mature understanding of the function of free will and the structure or makeup of your mind, body, spirit in third density. Because of the thickness of the veil, it is indeed not only difficult, but impossible to prove any reason for faith. Now, that's an important statement because when we go into the last section, which we'll get to in a minute, where we talk about the quarantine and the alternate timeline, it says that because of that, our veil on earth is thicker than usual. Okay? Our challenge to penetrate the veil here in this density and in this planet, this particular family, is that we have a bit of a thicker veil than is usual. And Quo is mentioning it or referring to it here, but we'll get to more detail on that in a minute. Because of the thickness of the veil, it is indeed not only difficult, but impossible to prove any reason for faith. Faith is truly faith. It is not faith in something proven, no matter how religious leaders like to use logic and words to create an atmosphere where they may convince believers that there is only one torturous path to follow in order to find salvation. I love the tongue in cheek that they're using there, and a little rip on those religious leaders who really want to enslave their people, not to empower them. Indeed, faith is born with each entity's heart as he decides or chooses to rest without varying in the vibration of absolute faith that all is well. So there you go. There's the choice. There's the vibration. There's the foundation of faith. All is well. All will be well. It is an activity and a choice which is strengthened as it is used. Like any muscle, it gets stronger with every repetition. So there's another key. There are those strains within entities which would prefer not to be powerful. There are ways of thinking endemic to the human condition, shall we say, that would like to lean upon an outer support, such as that which religions offer. He's talking there about people who don't want to own their power and become their own conduit to infinite intelligence. They want someone else to tell them. They want Cryon or Divine Mother or Ra or somebody who's channeling somebody else to get the information from them rather than to them to open it up for themselves. That's a little bit what he's saying there, that not to be powerful. Each of us is invited to open up this experience of penetrating the veil personally. And we really, it should be a part of the quest of your life. When entities give their power to others and say, I must listen to an intermediary, I must cast my hopes upon the kindness and compassion and saving grace of an intermediary, they have not yet grasped and accepted responsibility of their own power. So that's not to say that listening to Cryon or Divine Mother or others is bad or Ra is bad. Certainly not saying that at all. It is placing your faith in saying that that's the only way you can get guidance. That's when it becomes a problem. You can gain great insight from these people that are channeling these entities that are you have confidence that are in service to others. But the insight should be used so that you can open up your own path of guidance, I think is the point here. Good with that, or we have questions?
No, all good.
So how guidance comes through the chakra system. So this is where we talk about what to listen for. And we've mentioned it briefly, but he gets into more detail here. So Quell's saying the gateway open to you become able to work with the gateway open, you become able to work with more specific types of guidance that through specific are in general unheard and pouring into the heart itself in concept and essence rather than in thought and in words. So although they're specific, but not so much heard like in your head, but they're felt in your heart, concept and essence, rather than in thought and words. So there's one key there. The nurturing and care of the energy body is very important for those who wish to use the gateway to intelligent infinity in their seeking. Nurturing and caring of the energy body, unblocking the chakra points, same thing. Indeed, entities who are blocked in the lower three chakras are not able to sustain a full flow of infinite creator's energy that comes from the bottom of the chakra system upwards and moves through the chakras, exiting at the crown of the head. So there he articulates again, the direction of flow is from the earth up. The first requirements of working with the gateway of intelligent infinity is that the heart be opened. Again, reiterates that point. Consequently, although many seekers do not wish to continue to work intensively with the lower three chakras, it is our opinion that it is essential to continue to work with those three chakras, giving them all of the honor and respect that you give the higher chakras. Some people want to work with the higher chakras because they tend to be the spiritual chakras. The problem is your energy is not getting up through the blockages in the bottom ones. You're limiting your flow. Your water pressure is low, if you like. Within the system of cosmology, shall we say, the gateway to intelligent infinity rests above the energy center known as the brow chakra, third eye, or the indigo ray chakra. And hence, the work of indigo ray is that work which has most directly or proximity to do with opening the gateway to intelligent infinity. So again, the connection between the heart through the tongue to the third eye. He's making that connection there. The discipline of the personality and work in consciousness is the president and purpose of this energy center. And it is within this, precinct, in other words, domain and purpose of this energy chakra center. And it is within this center that the practices and disciplines requisite dwell for the most part in terms of their subject matter. So working. Again, he's reiterating what we said in clearing the chakra points. This light is literally sent down into the earth, into the heart of the earth, your mother, who then pours it from the center of the earth, or you might even say the womb of the earth, up through the earth into the soles of the feet, into your bottom system. There is a beautiful description of what happens. The divine energy or intelligence is centered in the earth's womb and drawn up through you, through those chakras. That's how it's designed to work. So that is the constant streaming into your energy system at the red ray level and rising it up, rising as it will up and out through the top of your head to the gateway to intelligent infinity. There is the opening and flow. That is how those who channel the prophets of old, the great yogis and masters who are enlightened, that is how they're able to do it. That is also how you're able to do it. Okay? So, the relationship between graduation and this work on chakras. And Quo's talking about this. And so this is very important because there's a bit of a difference in here. It's articulated quite well. It is to be noted that it is not necessary, in order to be of service to others and to graduate from third density, for the higher rays to be used in order to access the gateway to intelligent infinity. Not necessary. Simply, straightforward, straightforward, unconditional love and the energies of forgiveness and compassion shall carry any seeker through graduation with flying colors. That's the base level requirement, okay? Simple, unconditional love, forgiveness, compassion. Living in that space. That's heart-centered space. That is far more than enough to use in order to penetrate those energies that move one into higher light. Inherent in the process of the raising of the Kundalini, the concept of the possibility of perfection is the concept of the possibility of perfection. One must be able to accept one's creatorship, or one will never be able to fully to utilize the whole concept of the raising of the Kundalini. So accepting yourself, connecting with the creator as creator. For when one has attained the supposed goal of the raising of the Kundalini, and the Kundalini has settled at the brow chakra, the gateway to intelligent infinity can swing open, but only for the one who is able to consider himself a creator. Ra said in another place, no self except self. And the third one was see self as creator. And here Quo is saying the same thing, reaffirming it in a very powerful way. When you enter the silence, you enter the realm of the one infinite creator. There again, the power of that key. You enter eternity and infinity. And most of all, you enter the present moment. Wow, what a beautiful statement. You enter the silence, you enter the realm of the creator, you open the gateway, and you are fully in the now. You enter the present moment, which intersects at all times with the metaphysical universe. That's the gateway. That's the veil opening right there. You are a heartbeat away at all times from the gateway to intelligent infinity. You simply need to release the self from the structures of the intellect and logic and enter the silence. This is a helpful adjunct to the practice of attempting to serve others, and we would encourage it. So service to others will get you to graduate, but doing this gets you as an instrument in serving others in a very powerful way. And though the opening into the self, which are through the heart, and through the openings into the self, which are through the heart, not just in the chakra or in the finer bodies, but in the physical heart, there is entrance into the deep mind. So really powerful connection there. Graduation is one thing, but living powerfully as a spiritual being in the world is taking it a little bit further. Yeah? Questions?
No.
Okay. So now we'll just take a few minutes to talk about this quantum quarantine, and this lateral timeline, because Quo goes into some very good descriptions about this solar system that we're looking at here, and specifically starts off by talking about why we had to be quarantined and what's the consequence of that. So there's about 3-4 slides before we finish. At the end of the second major cycle of harvest, 25,000 years ago. So every 25,000 years or so, there's a harvest. 75,000 years is the whole period of time that it usually takes for one planet or one family of consciousness beings, third density, to get through third density. First time we had a graduation at 25,000 years, nobody graduated. At 50,000 years, only about 150 graduated. Most of them were from South America. That created a problem, and he's going to talk about it right now. So at the end of the second major cycle, that's what he's talking about. After 50,000 years of harvest, in third density upon planet Earth, the Council of Saturn became concerned that the solar system as a whole, meaning our sun and the planets around it, had been able to bring to a normal graduation only one of the planets in this particular solar system. That one planet was Ra's planet Venus, about 2 billion years ago. Mars and Maldek failed. We're the third one. So out of 3 that had been going before we came along, only one had succeeded. That was a concern. The Council of Saturn's governing this one, and they're like, hey, this solar system isn't doing too well. 1 out of 3 is bad, right? So that's what they were considering. Planets in the particular solar system that you call the sun. It decided, the Council at Saturn decided that it would be helpful to create a time lateral and to place the planet under strict quarantine. So that's when that happened, 25,000 years ago. It was further decided that all of those entities whose third density had been interrupted be brought to Earth to join Earth's cycle leading to harvest. So 2 things happened. They put this quarantine on us, put us in a time lateral, which means a separate timeline from the main timeline. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And they put in all of those from Mars and Maldek that had their third density interrupted. They were assigned to come here too and finish the third density, as well as about 15, I believe it was, other planets whose people hadn't gone on to graduation. The dropouts, if you want to call it that from a college analogy or a high school analogy, those who hadn't succeeded in graduating. So it was decided that they would come here. All of that happened about 25,000 years ago. Okay, interesting. It goes on. Accordingly, the metaphysical or time-space portion of your third density Earth was reconnected to the main track. So the time-space was reconnected to the main track, shall we say, or the progression of time-space and space-time in such a way that it was isolated and protected. It was as isolated and protected a hotbed or greenhouse for growing souls as could be devised. So the quarantine made us like a greenhouse that was specifically sort of an environment that was sort of out of the norm, like a greenhouse is in your yard, able to continue to have warmth and sunlight and growth, even when the weather on the outside doesn't support that growth, right? That's what a greenhouse does. So that's the analogy he's using here. That's what they did with this quarantine. It is precisely as real as the main track of time-space. So this lateral timeline that we're on. And indeed, it is equal to the main track in time-space. It is a carefully created alternative track which naturally feeds back into the main track of time-space and space-time progression. Later on, he says, The one thing it does, though, is it gives us more time. Our planet was supposed to have gone through that major transition around 2012. It's now been extended as a result of this, or it is extended as a result of us being on this lateral timeline. So that's one of the consequences of that, and we'll talk about that in a minute in more detail. At the conclusion of this time lateral, then the population of planet Earth shall be ready to take advantage of the opportunity to end the third subcycle of harvest and greet the end of that 76 or so 1,000-year cycle that is a third density cycle in its completion. So at the end of this time lateral, the planet will graduate. Because this is not a physical alteration, but a metaphysical alteration, there is no physical marker for the end of the time lateral. And indeed, this time lateral has been very successful compared to experiments in the past. The accumulation of awakening interest in altering the course of the vibration of the planet Earth has been late in starting, but has rapidly spread and gained strength in the parts of your globe in all peoples, cultures, and places. Your world is truly waking up. So he's saying there that we are actually better off because of this. So there's probably a lot of questions there, but let me go through the next few, because a lot of your questions will likely be answered around this time lateral, because I'm sure that's probably an easier way to do it. So here he goes on the 2 tracks of time. Again, because of the fact that such activities are primarily metaphysical rather than physical in nature, the effects of the improvement of the vibration of planet Earth are not physically obvious, except for the fact that your Earth is still functioning without the need to experience a polar shift. So implied there, if we weren't on this time lateral, we would have had a polar shift. It was thought at one time to be probable that your Earth would, by the end of your 20th century, have found it necessary in order to express the harvest or the heaviness of the vibration of Earth to destroy the Earth once again in terms of it being habitable for human life, as you call your third density. So it was thought that that was going to happen, but because of this time lateral, that didn't need to happen. So there's one of the reasons why they chose to do it. The polar shift would have likely caused that. However, the work of many groups, such as this one, has created now this one meaning talking to people who are meeting together, meditating often, channeling, trying to understand how to be in service to others better, the raw material, all that kind of thing. So many groups such as this one also implies our group, 5D and beyond. So the work of many groups such as this one has created the possibility of a strengthened and lengthened track in the time lateral. So that's the consequence of that. So that the maximum number of entities may awaken and choose whether to serve others or to serve the self before the time of such choices pass. Once again, there will be no physical change when the time ladder has passed. There will only be a change in the core vibration of the atoms of your universe, atom by atom, cell by cell, being by being. So had it happen at the quantum level. You have asked if the experience of this time lateral is like the holodeck, to reference to Star Trek, where they would go into a holodeck for entertainment and it would create an image of them being back in the old West or whenever, right? Whatever they wanted. So you've asked if this time lateral is like a holodeck, and we would say that indeed, whether you speak of the time lateral that you have experienced with its careful isolation and insulation from the full spectrum of thought available in the finite, infinite creator of the Father. So what he's saying there is the time lateral isolates us from the full spectrum of influence from outside of it. That's what the quarantine means, right? Careful isolation and insulation from the full spectrum of thought available in the infant creation of the Father, or whether you speak of the main track, you have the same material and one single agenda for moving forward and fulfilling your hopes for progress within your present lifetime within third density. So the main track was the original time track, the main track of time. We're on a lateral to it, parallel to it, but it's actually, everything else is kind of the same, other than that we're isolated from the full influence of outside of our quarantine area. So there's limitations on how much influence we can have from that. This has, later we'll find, has caused the thickening of the veil. And there's the connection to this topic. Part of what happens here is the veil then is considerably thicker than normal because of it. I think that's what he says right here. The second question is, in such a vast Milky Way, did the time lateral experiment happen in other planets before? So they asked him, have you ever done this before? Or you guys just trying this out with us? If so, are the results always positively successful? Cross says this: such experiments have occurred before from time to time. It's not very common, but they have done it in the past, and the results have been checkered. In other words, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There is perhaps nearly an even division between those experiments in which the various groupings of entities upon the planet turned from strife to a more unified view of the planetary population as one tribe, and those that were not able to achieve graduation in either polarity. So the point was to try and turn us from strife to becoming one tribe. That was the point of this time lateral. It was what they were trying to accomplish with us. Some of those experiments succeeded. There have been other attempts at, shall we say, cleaning up the energies of an entire planetary system where it was not possible to bring entities into one united spiritual being that could be called a social memory complex. The difference in planet Earth's experiment is that the sublogo, the sun, that's the sublogos is Ra's and their term for the sun that we revolve around, the physical sun. So is that the sublogo an experiment which was extremely rich in the full play of and travel of free will. So our sun chose to give us the maximum amount of free choice. Other suns didn't do that as much. They gave free will, but it was tempered more. We have been given a lot more than most. And that was one of the confounding parts of how we've progressed to this point, in a sense, is what he's saying. So that the veil was quite thick and most impenetrable. So a consequence of having such amount of free choice and the quarantine coming on has created this thick veil, which is more difficult for us to penetrate than normal. This heavy veiling and full play of free will has resulted in entities turning not to the creator, but to their own intellects. So they've gone to understand the universe through reason and rational things, science, and things like that, which wasn't the intent. And other planets without such a thick veil didn't do that. Okay. And to their own abilities and to find solutions to what they have perceived as challenges or problems. So that was one of the consequences. In previous experiments, the veil was thinner because there was not so heavy a veiling and there was not so much free will. The nature of third density entities upon your planet is therefore somewhat more primitive, or has a tendency to remain primitive longer than on planetary experiments where the veil has been thinner, and it has been more obvious to entities by virtue of the thinning of the veil that all are one. So other experiments, they perceive the unity and oneness of the creation much quicker and easier. We have not. We have become much more independent thinking and feeling isolated and not gaining that insight as quickly as others because of the thickness of the veil. He goes on, in the absence of any hurt from the outer world, in the absence of any hint from the outer world that all entities are one interconnected being, the tendency has been upon planet Earth during this cycle for entities to find reasons to separate rather than unite. So there's a negative consequence of it. And to disagree and come to embattlement rather than seek with all diligence for points of commonality that become a consensus for gradual and global change. At this point, we can say that the probability is that your experiment shall, to some extent, be successful. So it looks like we're doing all right. It looks like we're going in the right direction. He says in the final slide, we'll just do that now, that it's hard to know exactly what will happen because it's up to our free will. He says it right here. So he's accumulating, building on this, but one of the key points is that this quarantine and this lateral timeline, in conjunction with us being given an absolute abundance of free choice, more than most third density planets have created a kind of a thick, almost impenetrable veil. Consequence of that is that we've developed a lot of disharmony amongst us. Instead of coming together, we tend to have conflict, and we have a tendency to want to rely on our own intellect and initiative to understand things rather than to penetrate the veil and perceive the unity of creation and the oneness of things. So this is the final slide, and then there's a summary slide that kind of sums everything up. The outcome which those of negative polarity and higher densities would like to have occur upon the planet Earth is that the majority of the entities upon planet Earth decide. So this is what the Orion group, the negative ones, want. That the majority of people upon planet Earth decide that they are only safe in the proper spiritual alignment if they can live in fear and continuously find enemies to fight. That's the Orion group's agenda, in order to express the feeling of winning the day and controlling what is seen as available sources of power. And we mean this not only physically, but also metaphysically. So that's what they were trying to create. That's another reason why there's such conflict amongst us. If the planetary social complex becomes involved in what you could call a knot of fear, then they might voluntarily choose not to rejoin the main track. If we ending up like Maldek did, we'll become involved in this knot of conflict and fear, we won't be able to join back into the main timeline track. Right, we're on this tangent track right now to give us more time to get it right. But if we get it absolutely wrong, then something else might happen. And he says this would mean that this particular planet would be locked into a permanent third density cycle without the third density energy needed to progress. They wouldn't be able to get out of it. This would make this planet a slave planet in which entities fought and suffered endlessly and created food for the fifth density entities, Orion group entities, who have long eyed this planet with greed and the hope of conquest. Again, we cannot know the outcome of that which is completely at your free will. We can only tell you that the possibility vortexes have greatly opened in favorable way within the past generation and a half century. In the past 50 years of this planet's history, things have started to look like they're coming together. Things look hopeful, shall we say, that the rapidly increasing awareness of the need to choose to be a better way than strife for relating to one's fellow beings is needed. And as this realization spreads, and as the hunger for true peace, union, and love among all people grows, there is very likely to be a positive outcome at the end of this time lateral. So there's the explanation of this alternate lateral, the quarantine, consequence of it being a thick veil, and the dependence on our own reason rather than seeking for connection through that veil. So that's all of the stuff on the Lao. This is the summary of just everything we've done here. So let me just review this, and then we can just because I'm worried about time. So here's some key main points. Finding the moment of silence within is a key to opening the veil. Doing your own shadow work to balance the energy chakras results in raising the Kundalini and opening the veil. Being present in the moment, in the flow of the eternal now, and becoming aware of resistance is key to gaining guidance. Opening the gateway sometimes occurs as a great bang, but for most, it will be a gradual progression towards realization. The heart is the key. Quiet the mind and center awareness in the heart, where we receive concepts and essence rather than words. Unconditional love, forgiveness, and compassion are the conditions that assure fourth density graduation. Faith is a choice to risk. It's the courage to act. Faith is a quality of love. The essence of faith is holding the attitude that all is well and all will be well. Because our Son, our Sub-Logos, gave us complete free will, our veil is comparatively thick due in part to the quarantine put on after the second graduation was small. Hence, faith cannot be proven intellectually. The quarantine was chosen to stop Earth becoming a slave planet locked into a cycle of perpetual fear. Our planet is under quarantine and placed in a lateral time divergent from the main time passage to give us more time to bring unity and love among our peoples. The Earth's quarantine and lateral timeline experiment started slowly, but recently is indicating a successful, positive outcome is likely. So that's the summary of the whole thing. So I apologize for going over a bit, but we had such great questions. And I think it's important that we kind of put all this together. But let's open it up to any comments or questions at this point. Lee, if I'll
Sure.
just stop sharing, and then we can sort of go back to the main
Mhm.
play of things. There's a lot in there, like there always is with the raw material, but I'm really happy to entertain your questions and comments and insights from that. Thanks for listening.
Great. Ray.
Two question brief. If you can explain briefly about quarantine of Earth, and second thing, the free will is given to us by Sun. Maybe I miss in previous lecture something.
The Sun, according to the Ra, the Sun is an entity of great intelligence connection. And so it's called the Sub-Logos. The Logos is considered the central sun of our galaxy. And so I guess in their concept of creation, the creator creates these beings that become these luminous life source beings that then from them create other beings. So we are actually called the Sub-Logos. So you have the central sun of the Milky Way, Logos. Baby suns come from them. One of them is ours, called a Sub-Logos. In the Sub-Logos, they create planetary systems that are inhabited by different density beings who are called Sub-Logos. That's how Ra delineates it. So our sun, in its intelligence, decided the kind of rules for this area of creation within the parameters it got from the galaxy sun, which the galaxy got from the creator father, from the one infinite creator. So it flows like that, right? And that's kind of their concept of it. So the infinite creator gives some overall parameters, usually like the densities and kind of the expectation for growth from one density to the other. These are all kind of universal things, I think, in every universe. or in every level of the creation, they're all fairly similar. But the sublogos, or the sons, have the choice of, well, how much free will, how what are the laws of nature that you're going to have working there. They have a lot of freedom on how they want to set it up within sort of certain parameters. One of the choices our son made was to give us the maximum amount of free choice. Other sons have given free choice to a limited extent. All right. And there's good and bad that come from that. So we don't know all the ins and outs of why they made those choices. We're just told that that's how it worked out. One of the consequences of that was that when we were put under quarantine, with that level of free choice, it created a real thickness in the veil that makes it very difficult for a lot of people to penetrate. And that's why people wander around in third density on this earth, never, or many of them never experiencing or even wondering about the divine to much avail. They just wander around doing stuff, being distracted. And partly that's because the veil, the thickness of the veil, makes it that only those who truly seek seem to start to make that spiritual connection. And so it requires more effort to want to penetrate the veil than maybe in another solar system, is how I would understand it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any others? There's a lot to observe. One of the things I loved about what the quoll material gave is they gave a very good definition of what's going on from our timeline point of view, which answers a lot of questions as to why didn't something happen in 2012 when everything seemed to indicate it would? Why didn't this happen, or why didn't that happen? And part of that is this lateral timeline has enabled them to extend some things to enable us to get our act together, I think, is what it was. But
Brilliant. Sherry?
But why is it that some people never have to negotiate the veil? They have automatically just have the veil, they're unveiled, and whereas
Yeah.
others really need to strive towards.
Yeah.
And some,
that's
you
a
know,
great question. That's a great question, because I've wondered that myself. And I think the answer is that likely, as part of their life path, was that they would be partially unveiled. They would be gifted that way because they have a mission. Most likely they're wanderers. Many of them are wanderers or star seeds that have come down specifically. And so part of their endowment that they brought with them was the desire and ability to perceive at a deeper level. Or the other reason is some others who may also be wanderers had to strive for it, because that putting forth that effort gave them insight into themselves and gave them experience that they needed for their own growth. And so it was of benefit to them. See, if you have faith that everything is how it's supposed to be and all will be well, then if you're one that has to struggle, then know that there's a good reason for that, and it's actually a helpful reason. Some people, and many people actually that I've met and known, who seem to walk with one foot through the veil and the other foot on earth, have a lot of other challenges that most of us probably would rather not have. They have other kinds of difficulties and challenges. So there's always a payoff and a cost, isn't there? Yeah.
quite often they have physical challenges.
Yeah.
And even, you know, over the years, I found that they're not always, but they're not that aware of the chakras and a really spiritual side of life. I'm sure that comes eventually, but you know, this is as an immature person, but still has an insight.
And it can be hard for them to help others because they don't understand why others can't do it as easy as they can, right? They can't teach somebody the process because they never had to learn it. It just happens for them. And so they feel like well, why can't you just do it? Why don't you just listen to your heart? Or why you always, they don't understand the other person's perspective as well, because it hasn't been as challenging for them as it might be for most other people. As they said, some people will experience the insights into the self and the awakening as a big bang, but that's actually quite uncommon. Most of it is a gradual development. Most people go through that. And there's a great saying, great Zen master Suzuki. There's a story. He was once teaching, and one of his students, it was in an auditorium. There's probably 50 or so students, and one of them asked him a question, and the question was, "Why don't you ever talk about your great awakening moment? Why don't you ever tell us about that?" And his dear wife, who was sitting in the back, interrupted and said, "It's because he never had one." And that was actually true, because he had gradually awakened rather than having this phenomenal event that was like this miracle event that awakened him. And so in some sense, he was a better teacher for that, because he was teaching people the same path of gradual awakening, which is the most common path. The dramatic experience is fun to listen to, and you wow, what a great moment. But oftentimes it comes, and Eckhart talks about this, it comes when they're at a point of great despair and suffering, where they actually have to absolutely surrender. And Eckhart was one that had to go through that, where he got to a point where he was basically suicidal and just could not live with himself anymore. And he had that great epiphany. So again, there's a trade-off, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
It's on how it works.
So he had to go through the lessons to actually gain the.
Most of us will go through it iteratively like that, yes. And that's a path that's actually quite a common, normal, appropriate path. So as to aspire to having these great, insightful epiphany moments, it's interesting when you walk that path, you'll have some of those will happen, but they'll become quite sacred to you, and they'll become quite you'll start to realize that they're not that helpful to share it with too many people just openly, because all it does is make them feel like, well, if that hasn't happened to me, I must be doing something wrong. When the truth is, they're not. They're like Suzuki. They're just walking the path, and it slowly starts to get clear. It's like the mist slowly clears, and you start to see the great vista. Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got Judy.
Thank you, Scott, for a marvelous night. Just one thing that might make people feel really hopeful. Divine Mother told me that the division has already happened. They know who's going to graduate already. Demarcation has already taken place, but the people who aren't on the graduation side have got the opportunity right up to the last moment to show change. They're not stuck there. But the separation, they already know who's going and who isn't at this stage, at this point, this now moment.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Lou.
Scott, once again, for such a great presentation. In a different language, are there, or can you explain, if they do exist, indicators of awareness of our own magnitude or caliber of penetrating the veil? So that's one way to put it. Okay, I have a veil, and each veil might be different. I don't know if there is a way to measure it up, but through this process of penetrating, are there any indicators or things that we can experience in order to be aware that that we're there. I don't know if I expressed my question correctly. It's just
I
within
think,
this silence, I experience that sometimes.
yeah, I think I understand your question, Lou, and
Okay.
I think you know, all I can say is the faith that you're on the path that you're seeking, and the keys are things like put your attention in your heart when you're looking for guidance. Don't look in your head. Calm your mind. Go and create a practice of meditation as regularly as you can on a regular cycle, where you learn to recognize that quiet space and you can easily do it by just saying, who is it that's aware? What is aware? Or what am I aware of? I'm aware of the feeling of the seat that I'm sitting in, of the computer screen in front of me. I'm aware of my thoughts. I'm aware of my breathing. I'm aware of a pain in my neck or my back or whatever. What am I aware of? But I'm not any of those things. I am that which is aware of those things. And so let me look at what that is that's aware. And that's when you'll find there's silence, because your mind cannot answer that question because it's not a thing. The mind needs to grab onto and define things. It can't define that which is aware. It's not in the mind. And so you go out of the mind and the mind goes quiet when you reflect on that, and learn how to just sit for moments in that state. And when you notice you're back out of that state, that's okay. Notice whatever thought and acknowledge those thoughts and know now what's aware of that thought, or what's aware of that feeling, what's aware of that. And I want to be with that. And you'll find that the more you do that, the more you'll open yourself to heart experiences. And you'll start to have epiphany insights. You'll start to feel directed or impressed. And then as you have a little bit of faith and you act on them, even though they might not be rational, your monkey might try and talk you out of it, but you say, no, I'm going to try that. That was interesting. And you'll find that you'll start to build a repertoire of experiences that will give you confidence that you're being guided. You can ask specifically for the guidance, and Ra talks a lot about that, because your free will, when you ask for it, you open them up to enable them to give it to you. But they won't give it to you in the way that you demand it or think it should come, that would be easy for you. They'll give it to you in a way that will teach you about yourself and empower you to go deeper into yourself. Know yourself, accept yourself, see self as creator is the process. So look in your path and say, you know, what experience, when do I feel that peaceful, loving, powerful experience of connection? It doesn't need to be any more than that. But the more often you dwell on that, the more often you'll find that you're thinning the veil and you're able to then start to receive even more. You might receive them in dreams. You might have open experiences. There's no limit to what it will be, or it might just continue to be a quiet simmering that slowly warms further and further until you start feeling this deep abiding confidence and love and this happiness and peace that all people seek. That you'll find one day it'll just dawn on you that you've got that, right? And you won't even be able to figure out, when did that happen? You'll start to realize that it's part of who you are, and you're dwelling in the moment. The other key thing is, if you notice that you're less and less preoccupied by what's going on tomorrow or what happened yesterday, but you're living in the moment, that you're focused in the now, that's another signpost, if you like, that things are going in the right direction.
Okay, I understand all that. I guess I was more up to some kind of examples. This I do understand and agree completely in everything that you just said. I was aiming more to like examples. for example, why? For example, what Catherine said, do you know that you know? That to me is one example. Don't ask me why, but I know that I know that it's in that direction. So this is the type of example that I'm aiming for. They might be different in all of us. It's just to try to recognize in my 3D action or functioning, to recognize these moments. I'm always in the moment. I don't have a problem with that. And I live in the silence. I'm just trying to get one step forward, and that is to identify these examples, like what Catherine said. I know that you know. I know that I know. To me, that is one example. So that's what I'm trying to get at.
I think everybody's path is different, as you've said, and the examples will manifest themselves to you in the way that they need to bring you to the next level. Just ask for that. Ask for awareness to grow in seeing that connection. That will continue to build your confidence that you're on the right path. Because the way that it manifests to me or to Judy or to Lee or anybody else, to Ray, anybody else, will be unique to them. And so to tell you to look for this would be to do you a disservice, because you probably will end up blocking what's actually been shown to you because you're thinking it's supposed to be X and it's actually Y. So the key is to be open to what is your experience and recognizing that there's a metaphysical component of that experience. And then just trusting that that's an indication that you're on the right path. It can happen like synchronicities is another way that a lot of people have with whether it's numbers or deja vu experiences or whatever. There's all sorts of ways synchronicities show up. But there's lots of examples of those in literature. But again, they're only one person's mind's interpretation of the experience. What you want to do is open yourself up to be sure you don't miss what's being offered to you and how it comes to you. And it'll be uniquely yours, Lou. It'll be yours in a very beautiful, personal way, as it probably has been from what you've said. So it'll continue in that way. Yeah.
Okay. So it's personal and very individual. It could be manifested in different ways, different than Sherry or Judy's or yours or Lee's or anyone else. Okay.
I would hesitate to say that no two people have the same experience, even if they experience it together. No two people will interpret and understand it in exactly the same way. So yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Judy?
Yes, I believe that that's absolutely true, Scott. No two beings have ever experienced it exactly the same way either. There's one thing that that might be useful, Lou. Sometimes we think we need to understand something, and Divine Mother was just telling me today that there's no understanding in this silence, this place. If we're understanding it, we're not there, because understanding is part of the intellect. So it's beyond understanding. It's a realization that you can't put into words. It's just a great expanded feeling of bliss. And there's no manifestation of anything. Any manifestation that comes during that place, when you're in that place, is relative. So the thing is to go beyond the relative, where there's absolute silence and emptiness and bliss. And understanding doesn't come into it. You don't try to understand at all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Bez?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm what Judy just said, because that's where I am at the moment. And what I find is that when I'm in the now, I'm thinking about what just happened, and that's not in the now. That's analyzing. And I read an article a couple of weeks back, which said most people live about 2 minutes past the now, where they're analyzing what just happened, what was just said, etc. And what I think, I was doing that, and I was thinking what I have to do is get back to when I was fighting in the martial arts. Or if you think about walking through the park and somebody throws a ball at your head and you don't see it coming, but your hand goes up and catches it, and you think, wow, how did that happen? That's in the now, because there's no thought process. And if you're fighting and somebody's going to punch you, you haven't got time to think he's going to punch me in the head. I have to do this block, because by that time you got a sore head. So the now is absolutely free of any thought or recognition for me, and that's where I'm working on now. So I don't know whether that helps, but I think that's kind of what Judy was saying as well.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Baz.
Baz.
Anyone else? No? All good. Well, hold on, Andrew. You just snuck in there.
Oh, made it in time. I'm just interested, Scott. I just had a quick look on the what is it, LL research page. I couldn't find any reference to what was the other name? Quo?
Yeah.
Where would we find information or to be able to read some of that material?
It's on the LL research. Make sure it's the right one. I don't know if there's some fake ones, but it's on there. You just have to make sure that you're searching not just under the raw material, but under all of their material.
Okay.
Because they have a good search engine, but that's where it says. It's definitely there.
Okay, I'll have a more thorough look.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Scott. Another amazing night. Gosh, we're lucky. So, yeah. Any final words before we head off, Scott?
No, thank you, Lee. I'm so appreciative of the interest that you guys have on this material. I love to share it, and so I love the questions. And just we're all on a journey together. So thank you for the time. Thanks for your interest.
Brilliant. All right. So yeah, I'll get the documents and the video loaded up onto the website over the next couple of days. Lou, you've got a final comment, question?
Not anymore. You just answered it.
Okay. Brilliant.
Everyone.
All
Thank you,
right.
Scott, for all your hard work. It was a deeply involved night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Night.
Thank you,
Good night.
Scott.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Lee. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.